Good evening and welcome. It's time to call this July 25th, 2019 Budget Workshop, special call board meeting of the Board of Trustees of San Felipe CISD to order. Madam Secretary, would you call roll?
Mr. Contreras?
Present.
Mrs. Manawato Webb?
Present.
Mr. Mesa?
Here.
Mrs. Haynes?
Here.
Sanders? Mr. Smith? Mr. Overfelt? And myself? Sir, we have a quorum.
Let the record show that we do have a quorum of board members and that this meeting has been duly called in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code Chapter 551. Again, we will have our workshop first, then adjourn the workshop and go into our regular meeting. At this time, we have opening ceremonies, which again, we will take a moment of silence for personal reflection, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. We're down to item 3 on our agenda. At this time, I will turn it over to Mr. Henry Arredondo.
Mr. Mesa,
Yes, sir.
please, the board, I'm going to be making the presentation, but Mr. Arredondo is going to take us through the first part. So,
Okay.
Good evening, board members and Dr. Rios. I'm Henry Arredondo, Chief Financial Officer, and we're here to discuss the budget. This will be the third budget workshop. We're here to discuss projected general fund revenues and projected general fund expenditures, and then at the end, the calendar for the remaining meetings. So general fund revenue, we have, from the last time we presented, we have an increase of approximately $2.5 million. Okay, we're working on the 6th version of the revenue template that the state sends us to work on it. So there's been another revision. There's, some increases, small increases in revenue are reflected here. One of the main things that is affecting the school district and, of course, the property taxpayers is the tax compression that is going to happen with the new bill. Current year, our tax rate is at 1.1598, and with the compression, it's going to go to 1.0617. That's for the local revenue. I just wanted to make that note. Now, we will be seeing an increase of approximately $11 million in the FSP Formula Foundation state aid, which is very significant. And this is the portion where later on in the presentation you'll see that we have to allocate to teacher salaries and the nurses and the other type of workers. Now, on the expenditures, I'm gonna link over to the interactive workbook. And we'll start. Here's the same revenue sheet that we saw a little while ago. The revenue is increasing from prior year 93 million to our new budget year 103,100,000.
Are there no comments? We're going to start with the overall picture. And what we wanted to share with the board before we continue is that this general picture we have already included. Now we can come back and change it, but we have already included the $260,000 that we wanted to allocate to increase the student drug testing. We can go back and decrease the budget by that much, but we thought it was important enough that we put it up here. Okay? We also included $125,000 to run summer school. Over the last few years, we've seen a decrease in our Title I fund, and we've had to shift a lot of the expenses to the local budget, so much so that this year it was a little bit tough trying to fund summer school. So we just went ahead and just up front said, we're going to fund summer school from the local budget. So we allocated $125,000. Then we also allocated the $1.3 million to pay the ESCO loan. We won't see the guaranteed savings until the project is complete. So just in advance, we wanted to share with y'all that that money was already allocated there. The other area that we wanted to point out is the money for the insurance. We want to make it clear that whatever salary increase the board approves for all of our employees, none of that salary increase goes to pay for the insurance. We're making provisions aside from that to allocate an additional $25 a month contribution by the district per employee. So having said all that, just wanted to point those things out. The way the budget stands right now, when we look at the bottom line, we're going to present to you today what we consider a balanced budget. Now, granted, we can go in and make any changes that y'all direct us to, but the way we're presenting it right now, it would be a balanced budget. We'll start with a general pay increase. Mr. Arredondo already talked about the revenue, but in the general pay increase, what we're recommending is the 9% general pay increase across the board. Now, 9%, what that means is that our teachers would take, within $50 of each other, would take approximately a $5,000 pay increase. That's per teacher. That comes out to about 9% from the midpoint. Now, there's a couple important things to note. Not all $5,000 are coming from the state. The state said that we had to allocate 30% of that for salaries and then a certain percentage of that for teachers. The rest of the money comes from the school district. We're asking the Board of Trustees to approve pretty much the general pay increase that we would approve year over year that costs the district about $1.6 million, more or less. We'll have the defined numbers at a later time, but not all the money is coming from the state. The other thing to note is that we're clear that the teachers are going to get approximately $5,000. So we get questions, well, how about everybody else? How much will cafeteria workers get paid? How much will bus drivers get paid? At the low end, the lowest pay grade, we'll see right around a $2,000 increase, $2,100. The more experienced employees with more years, we'll see about a $2,400 increase. Okay. Now there are other options, and as we've discussed, but we're recommending the $5,000 one, which represents a 9% increase. Then let's go over to the next area, where is new positions. We mentioned the need to turn our critical needs aides that work with our life skills students into permanent employees. We already know that current legislation is going to require us to pay them the same benefits that we pay other individuals. So we're recommending that we move all our critical needs aides into permanent positions at just one pay grade right below a regular instructional aide. We talked about a bilingual director. That position will cost approximately $90,000. We talked about this position. We've been talking about it maybe now for about 4 months. just because we know that the bilingual population continues to struggle, we need to figure out how we're going to move from that stage 3 to stage 2 to stage 1. Right now we have a bilingual coordinator. The bilingual coordinator should spend most of their time helping to develop the resources for the teachers. So as much time as that one person can get around to the districts, but there is no staff. You know, they spend most of their time working at the bilingual academies, but that leaves the rest of the district and the rest of the programs. What we'd like to do is have a bilingual director that oversees the compliance, the accountability, the overall development of the program in terms of, you know, how much English is taught versus Spanish in kinder, first, second, third, all the way through, what programs we use, and really try to build the staff around it to help move that data forward. The special education speech-language pathologist, Dr. Aguirre, since the beginning of the budget, had asked for this position because of increased numbers. We didn't include it in the first draft of the interactive workbook, but we're including that one today. And then having a safety monitor at the Bobby Barrera Elementary, that costs about $14,000. And then federal programs. Now, the federal programs director, you'll see there that there is no cost associated with that position. The reason there isn't a cost associated is because we would take the the migrant coordinator, and we would take the Title I coordinator, and then the parental liaison coordinator, combine all of those into one position. So we'd have a director that would have all these increased responsibilities. It really ends up being about minimum a $60,000 savings when we combine those 3 positions into one. It's a savings and it's less personnel. Those are the positions that we're recommending that we add. In the past, we had talked about the strategist at the non-bilingual academies. The board asked some questions about it, and we opted to remove them because it's really more of a distraction to talk about it. We know we don't have the certified people to take on those positions, and we wouldn't leave a classroom vacant to create a coordinator. So we just went ahead and just removed them all together. Okay? Now, we'll move to the construction. What I'm going to do is I'm going to reopen the PowerPoint presentation and just show you slides of the construction that we're recommending for this coming school year. Mr. Arrondo, this is your file. Is this, it's already open? Oh, here it is, right here. Thank you, sir. Okay, let's just go over what we're recommending in the construction, then we'll come back and look at the costs. These are the projects that we're looking at. We're looking at converting the 1,000 wing to a fine arts wing. What do we mean by fine arts? We mean having a place for the dance company, for the bells, for the cheerleading, for all the dance classes, gutting out the 1,000 wing and turning it into just a big dance studio. If you remember when we tried to float the last bond election, we went to the upstairs where the bells dressed, probably since the 70s, and you saw the deteriorated conditions, and you definitely saw that there wasn't enough space in the dance room for the dance company and the dance classes. So this is all part of trying to make up for what didn't happen when the bond didn't pass. 800 and 900 wing renovations, we're estimating about $600,000, and the 800, 900 wing furniture, $400,000. The dining hall, we know that right now that we're renovating the entire cafeteria, we are going to remove that, I don't know what to call that material that's up on the ceiling, but we talked about removing. Yes, sir. And then adding an acoustical solution. The dining hall floor, those are the 2 areas that we will still need once the cafeteria is complete. We need the new ceiling and the floor. The floor, we talked about covering it all up with a nice laminate, and that way we would cover the whole cafeteria, upper level, lower level, the area in front of the little theater, the area in front of the library, and if possible, the upper level that goes from the science wing to the old band hall. And then, because of changing the walls in the space, we are going to be required to have a fire suppression system. So we also need to put whether it be a sprinkler system or a PKP powder one in there. We're going to have to do something like that. Life skills renovations. If you'll see over here on this side, on the right-hand side of the screen, that's a life skills room. And if you've walked in it before, you can see that that life skills room is about 2 decades behind the life skills that we have at, for example, Fermin Calderon Elementary or even at North Heights Elementary. It's just a very not user-friendly building, and it needs to be renovated. So we prioritize that. The restrooms at the freshman campus, we fixed the restrooms at the high school campus, but the ones at the freshman campus are from when the building was first built, and Mr. Arredondo was commenting earlier today that he was the first class that went through there. He also commented that that was about 40 years ago, and that's how old the restrooms are. So it's time for that they be renovated, all of them in the campus, so that's an additional $500,000. And then this year we had hoped to fix the traffic at Buena Vista Elementary. We fixed, or think we fixed the traffic at Lonnie Green by adding that extra pickup point. But if you look at Buena Vista Elementary, right here, this is the corner of Amistad and Echo Valley, and this is the front of the school. We want to build a route all around the back that can be used to queue up all the vehicles and then end up here in the gymnasium where students can either be dropped off or be picked up. The old route, you see how much smaller it is, would more than likely be used for buses and daycare vans. And we think that we can do all that under $400,000. And then we have built the driveway at Lonnie Green, but there is no canopy. So we want to take some space here, build a canopy here and a sidewalk. This canopy is the one that's at the freshman campus. That was built by our personnel, and we think we can replicate that at the back of Lonnie Green, along with the sidewalk and the cement work for no more than $60,000. Let's go back to the budget workbook. Okay, so that's the construction piece. Okay? Food service. If you remember, we created a list and we came up with a 3-year plan where we were going to allocate approximately $350,000 the first year. Then this next year, we want to allocate another $321,000, and then the final year, around $90,000. We already have the money for the first year, and we've even placed those orders. Now, because of issues with the vendor and the supplier, we have to bring them back to you again for action and go a different route, but that money's already there. This money is for year 2, probably what we would end up doing closer to the summer, because it's going to take most of this first semester to install whatever equipment we were buying for the $350,000. But still, we want to put the money there so that immediately after that's done, that'll get fixed. And that's for every campus, and that's everywhere from food warmers to dishwashers. It's all the equipment that was prioritized in working with staff. Okay. Now we go to operations. In operations, we went back and we looked at the all of the AC units that were needed, and we decided to recommend to the board that we not replace any of them because we spent a lot of money with the ESCO project, and we'd rather do some of the other construction items. And we feel like we can still postpone this for 1 or 2 years, still having to do some repairs from time to time, but we can still definitely get by and be comfortable. But we do want to do the interior and exterior painting at San Felipe Memorial and at the SGLC. And if you go down the list, you'll see that that's pretty much all we're going to do, with the exception of having an HVAC replacement at the Austin building, because that is a building where we move the individuals, all the maintenance workers, away from wagon wheel, okay? We want to buy 2 maintenance vehicles for $35,000. The reason that we can get 2 for $35 is because we buy them with about 100,000 miles on them already, and then we add another 400,000 miles to them. Buy some classroom furniture for SGLC. The track at Del Rio High School, we need to plan to resurface that. We should have it on a recurring maintenance plan, and that's coming overdue now. Do some asphalt work at Del Rio High School. If you go by the student parking lot, you start seeing potholes already. So we definitely have some work to do there. And then some lighting at the Little Theater. And that's what we want to do on the operations side. On the technology side, again, it's limited what we want to do, but we definitely want to continue to work to secure our virtual environment. It's about $150,000 for servers, another $200,000 to build a backup plan so that should things happen, we have a backup plan and it won't take us months to restore it, and instead it'll take us just a couple of days. And unfortunately, that's a reality these days where we have to protect all our data from cyber attacks, from ransom attacks. And then we want to buy some network printers. And let me see. And that's really about it. 3 copiers for the high school. If you remember, we had a lot of discussion through the teacher council communication, and we said that even though we were limiting the printers, we were going to increase the copiers as the renovations were occurring. So that's what we're recommending to do there. And all of this brings us to the bottom line, where we're able to present to you a balanced budget given what Mr. Arredondo presented, with the increased income giving the teachers the $5,000 pay raise, and then giving a 9% across the board to all other employees. Now, I'm going to go back up to the top, but if there's questions between the staff and myself, we'll do our best to respond to them.
Okay, first of all, I think this is a very positive thing that happened between the last meeting that we had not too long ago, which was Monday, and today. Being the 6th template coming from TA, it does not surprise me, and I'm glad that because at the last meeting we discussed that possibly in 1 year from now we would have to ask the employees to pay a $25 share for insurance. And so I'm glad that administration has thought of that first, and that being taken care of. And with House Bill 3, there's still some questions because I know that hasn't been finalized. I know that my question deals with dyslexia, for example. There's some additional money that has to be directed for that program, and I don't know whether it's resources or personnel. But in regard to the insurance, I think that's a very positive thing. The other thing is, when I look at Buena Vista, for example, I know that was a fire lane. And I don't know if we have enough room for both in regard to dismissal in the event of an emergency there.
Yes, sir. We've had our construction department, Mr. Chapa, who's sitting in the back, and he's had those discussions both with the civil engineer, with some people in the city, and it can work just fine.
Great. I'm glad to see that. That'll alleviate a lot of traffic on the other side where we have students also dismiss about the same time that we do with Grace Community Church behind there. These are all real positive things. I'm so glad that we have, real good things to say about the budget. My other question has to do with the wind farm and the pending litigation in regard to that. If we were to get some additional monies, would there be a plan of action in regard to that, Dr. Rios?
Sorry, I just want to make sure I understand the question. Would there be a plan of action for the additional money, or would there be a plan of action, is there a plan of action to go after the money?
No. for the resources, the money that, if there were a settlement, for example.
Before you answer, Dr. Rios, I had a question on that also, because somewhere, I can't remember where, we had 75,000 allocation. Now that 75,000 allocation was us allocating, or the
wind farm.
The appraisal district allocating 75,000?
Okay. Okay. The initial, that $75,000 was money that I asked, the administration asked the board that we set aside should we have to contribute money for additional litigation. Now, we've been told that we don't have to. I have been visiting the subject with the attorney about possible options for trying to reach a settlement. If you remember, there was two issues, and I'm referring to the area where they double booked 2 entries, or T.Y. Pickett double booked 2 entries. Now, I haven't moved forward with it because the board is going to be making a decision about legal counsel, and I figured that once that decision was reached, then we would move forward and see if we wanted to take action in terms of addressing the errors that T.Y. Pickett made. But should there ever be a settlement, if you look at that sheet that we shared with you all, the 2 areas that we should look at once we knew there was a settlement would absolutely be either technology or operations, because of what we've decreased, and we have to come back the following year and see what maintenance we've deferred, or what innovations in technology still need to be made. But again, we'd have to get to that point first.
Okay. I know that that's a pending issue with the litigation.
If I can, I asked Ms. Gomez and Ms. Garcia to revisit House Bill 3 and the additional requirements, and I know that they looked specifically at the dyslexia. It pretty much involved just additional training. I don't know if you have further questions for Ms. Garcia regarding it, but we determined that we didn't have to set money aside, and that we would be well within any requirements.
Okay. Well, I'm going to turn it over to other board members. Mr. Contreras.
Well, I have a few questions. First and foremost, thank you. I think you've done a pretty comprehensive job in finding the monies and everything. But my question is, are we leaving any table with HB3? Have we looked at every possible angle to get as much money as possible from it, as far as any programs, for example, like dyslexia?
There is one additional program that we have to study some more, and that's incentive for, I'm going to use the term master teacher, but that's not how they refer it. Yeah. If we developed a program to identify master teachers, we could get additional funding. But we haven't, they haven't put out all the rules on it yet, and that's something that nobody really knows how it's going to work. We have to work with the service center, and we have to work with TA, but that is probably one area that we'll absolutely look at and make sure that we maximize funding. Every other part of House Bill 3, they've been real good about coming up with videos and PowerPoints. We've made sure that our staff has reviewed most of them. I am going to review, once again for the second time, the full day pre-K with Ms. Ruby Adams, and I believe I invited Ms. Gomez and some other people from the finance department, just to be ready for it, because they talk about pre-K3, pre-K4 funding, but it's not that clear cut. But rest assured, we're not leaving any money on the table. We're maximizing every penny we can.
Okay. And then the second part is, I know that on the percentage is 9%, but, and going back to last year, I think it was the first year in a while that we had given or given the coaching stipends and lead teachers. Have we thought about it? Have we looked at any numbers to see if we can possibly increase the lead teachers or coaching stipends? Is there any money there?
We did, and here's what the staff recommended if we wanted to make any changes where it would be easiest to make. Dr. Aguirre indicated to us that perhaps, Mr. Arrondo, can you come back and go to additional personnel? she came back and she indicated that perhaps we didn't have to fund all CNAs, so that we needed some money. We could take that in increments. So the board asked us between now and the time we adopt the budget to look at anything, we could decrease that number and then shift it somewhere else. I would be, I guess, reluctant for that to be our first option, but there would be money there, and we did do a comprehensive study with other districts, and we try to bring them as close to par with other districts as possible. There's still a small area there to make improvements. However, my fear is that the increased stipends that we would provide to all individuals would be not as significant as what we did last year, and perhaps the impact that the CNAs would have would be more significant. That's why we opted for that. But we can make any changes that y'all would direct us to.
But because what I was looking at, and just in the last year that I've been here, I haven't seen one job that hasn't been favorable. In fact, I've seen every job been favorable, to where if that keeps up, if we look at the construction trend and all the construction jobs, I think from every single job, I think there would be favorability there on those numbers. If you can go to that tab, Henry, to the construction. I mean, when you're looking at those numbers, in just in a year, I can tell you we've never been unfavorable. Unlike the city, almost every job we were upside down or something, because of the construction jobs, things that we came up and stuff. But here, for some reason, we've never been to where I can see some favorability in every single job because of those numbers, and maybe find the resources from there to give it back to the stipends and lead teachers.
Mr. Mesa, Mr.
So we're looking at a good $4 or $5 million there.
Well, that's obviously what we'd like to allocate to the construction. During the last meeting of the budget year, we're going to present the favorability across the board. And right now, we don't have too many areas where we absolutely have to dedicate some of that favorability. So Mr. Arredondo and his staff will look at the favorability. We'll present to you all a report and just some district needs, and that's certainly an option if the board would like to do that.
Okay. And then also I would want to know, how many jobs have we done away with by attrition or by consolidation? Like, for example, one of the federal programs, I think we consolidated 3 jobs there. How many other jobs have we consolidated or done away with by attrition because people have retired? And put a number to it.
Sure. Well, okay, so the jobs that we've consolidated, the savings are already reflected in the budget. Okay, so there isn't any future savings from consolidation. Immediately, I can tell you that we reduced 2 cabinet positions, and we did not in any way, shape, or form replace them. And that was with benefits and everything. That was probably a combined $240,000. And then the others are in federal programs, and that's not reflected in the budget. I can't think of C&I director. That's right, we did away with that, and we consolidated that with Ms. Gomez's work. And in the maintenance department and technology department, I know that there was a couple small positions there. Those are the ones that come to mind. I'll have to ask Aide Garcia to do a more comprehensive report.
Okay.
But they've mainly been administrative positions.
Okay. Okay. And then I know that we're trying to address on the 1000 wing with the dance company. However, I know that there's a need like for the theater arts and choir hall. Is there any way or within the construction that we can accommodate these folks? The choir I know that they're all kind of crunched up they're in a corner and in the theater arts department.
Theater arts, they asked us for some lighting in the little theater, and they gave us that money based on some research they did on the lighting. Choir, we have not addressed renovating the choirs using the original band hall, So we have not addressed renovating that one. We can certainly include it on the list and see what it will cost to do something with that band hall and bring it forward. We can come up with a preliminary number for y'all to consider and see if you'd want to remove one of those items. But again, when we look at the fine arts, even though choir hasn't received a hall for themselves, when they did the band hall, it was supposed to have a choir room in there, the new band hall. Now, because of the growth of the band programs, they use the old band hall for choir. And I could see where the needs for choir and the need for the other students in fine arts would be the same. The only difference is probably that in the fine arts, the young ladies in the fine arts, those numbers are much bigger than our choir numbers, but we'll get a preliminary cost.
Okay. And then lastly, I mean, I know that you just mentioned that we're upgrading our servers and I guess our firewalls. I mean, I think we need to invest more to protect against malware and ransomware type of attacks. You know, to where upgrading our firewalls would be key. And of course, our servers, just investing more money into it.
And Mr. Henge is smiling because he did ask for more money than what we allocated in the budget. So that, absolutely.
Oh, great job. Thank you, Henry. I mean, I think you guys kind of done a good job. Appreciate it.
Mrs. Webb?
I would have liked to have had a copy of that before coming in, because I see it there, and I'm comparing it to the one that we had the last time, and there are some changes that have been made, but we don't see them until we get here. So that's one concern. But with the GPI, we only covered the first model, the 1.8% model, but you never addressed what it would be with the 2.7 or the 3.6 models as well.
Would you like Mr. Arrondo to go back to that page and share with you the numbers?
Yes, that would be helpful. That way at least we have a picture of all of them.
And you're right, Ms. Webb. Literally, we worked on this presentation through this afternoon when we finalized it. Because of the updates, and then they had to send it to Moak and Casey to verify that the actual numbers, particularly in the income, were correct. Now the good news is that now it's complete, and between now and the next time we meet to formally adopt the budget, we still have approximately 2 weeks, Mr. Arrondo.
Yes.
He'll go over the timeline, but before we end, but he has the pay increases up there now.
Okay.
So the first option is the 9%.
I was gonna ask, excuse me, sir. When we all did the interactive budget, did you look into, consider all of us? Is that a consensus of what we wanted?
This, not everybody turned in the budget workbook, okay? But we definitely looked at it, and now we're gonna have to ask for y'all's input again as we come for the next meeting, approximately 2 weeks from now.
Okay, well,
It's still ongoing.
yeah, but I just wondered if there was a consensus of this.
No, we
Looked at everybody's, that turned in.
we absolutely looked at everyone that turned in, but now we have to get y'all's input between now and the next time we meet, because the income changed a whole lot, is really what happened. And then we went back and we reduced some things, but based on what you shared with us, we did make changes.
Okay.
Okay, and I think you'll see some of your changes reflected on there.
Because I don't know anybody, I know she did, I don't know. But it's all combined, I mean.
So the previous one had 6%, 7%, and 8%, I believe. But now with the additional revenue, we have to adjust, you know, because there's a mandate that you have to pay so much, put it back to the teachers. So now with this, on line 14 here, it used to be 5.4%. But with the additional revenue, now that turns into 7.2%. And that's how the percentage increases overall. So now the lowest percentage we have is 9%, and then option 2 is 10%, and option 3 is 11%.
I'm sorry, before we move on, so there you can see where it says 7.2% that would be mandated from the state. And then there is the additional 1.8% from the district. That's where you get the whole 9%.
Correct.
So then go to option 2, Henry.
So option 2 is, again, the 7.2%, but instead of 1,000, it's, you add 500 to it, the 1,500, and that's a 2.7%, which in total brings it to a 10% increase. And then option 3 stays the same, the 7.2, which is the 4,000, 2,000 increase. So it's 3.6%, but combined together, that'll be 11%.
Thank you, sir. And then the other question that I had, in our previous interactive budget, we had what is called the fine arts, but in reality, it's not really fine arts because we're not addressing all of the fine arts. We're only addressing dance. And then my calculation, fine arts refers to, like Mr. Contreras was saying, the choir, the theater, the art teachers. It addresses the whole area. So this wording is misleading to me. And on the first budget workshop that we had to convert the 1,000 wing to fine art, but in reality it's dance, at a cost of 950,000, and the one presented right now is 1,250,000, which has an additional 300,000.
Yes.
Why?
Because we went back and adjusted for the current construction costs that we're seeing. We went back and adjusted for a raised ceiling in either the center or the side of it, and that's just an updated number that is more reflective of what it would actually cost, so that we don't have to come back and add more money at a later time. And you're right. If you'd like, we could change the name to dance or whatever. You know, it would be cynical to think that we're attempting to mislead anyone, especially since we've mentioned that it's for dance all along. But for the public and everybody else that may not be part of these meetings, every time we certainly call it dance room or whatever you like. We'd hate to think that anybody would think that we're trying to mislead them.
Well, I mean, because when I see fine arts, I believe it's a section for all of the fine arts. All of the fine arts will be addressed in that facility, in that 1,000 wing. And in reality, it's not.
Right, but you agree that we've always talked about it being for dance, right?
Yes, that's why I'm saying
well,
it's
good.
misleading here.
Right.
And when it just mentions dance, I'm very leery of spending close to $1 million just in the area of dance. Mr. Contreras alluded to the fact that the theater arts building, besides lighting, I'm sure needs other areas that need to be improved in there because of all the work that these young students do in there as well. And we know that our art teachers also need other areas because we've seen it on our website and things like this, that they are lacking and spending their own money to purchase things. So I would say that, in my opinion, if we're gonna do something for just dance, we look at it for the following year and not necessarily this year, but look at fixing the little things first that need to be addressed, but that's just my opinion. The other area that I noticed was in the 800 and 900 wing, which would be the science and the math section of the high school, am I correct?
No, it's the math, you're correct. And then the other wing, it's just adjacent to that.
Okay.
But yes.
Okay, because we had allocated 605,520 the first time, and I guess due to cost factors, now it's only 600,000.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Han gave Can you come up to the podium? I know that we talked about that, and it's really about what we're able to do and encompass as many projects as we can, but hover over the 600, I'm sorry, the 800 and 900 wing. Okay. And if you can see on that, ma'am, if you go back to on the left-hand side, there's a no next to it, and there's no money allotted.
Right.
Okay. And the reason is, again, just because there wouldn't be enough money in the budget to cover everything. That's our recommendation based on what we're doing. Y'all can put a yes next to it and a no next to the fine arts wing or anything else that you'd like. But the recommendation from administration is that we not address the 800 and 900 wing beyond what the ESCO project is doing. In other words, they're getting new AC, a brand new AC system in both wings. But in terms of having our staff go in there and put up new walls and floors, we're not recommending that at this time. And again, that money was only enough to have our personnel do it. But we just don't think that it's something that we want to commit our personnel to doing right now. And if we were to contract someone to do it, well, then it would obviously be a whole lot more than that. But that's why we're not recommending we do it.
And then as I look at the high school map, and I look at the fact that we are right now renovating the 400 wing, and we demolished the teacher's lounge in the 400 wing, and we have teachers in the 1300 wing, the 1100 wing, and right now the 1000 wing. Where are these teachers going to use as their lounge or bathroom time or what have you? Because there is no place in there that allows them easy accessibility to get from point A to point B without leaving their students unattended or monitored by another teacher. And what I'm looking at is liability, because if I have another teacher monitor my students and something happens while I'm gone because she's attending to hers, who's liable?
Well, I want to be clear that the expectation is that teachers never leave their classrooms unattended. I also want to be clear that they're given a 30-minute lunch period, duty-free, that there's plenty of other personnel that can come cover from them if it's a real emergency where they have to go for whatever the case may be. There's people that the office can send to cover for them. But the expectation is that they never leave anybody unattended and that somebody cover the classroom.
That is true, sir, but the reality is that as a teacher, sometimes you have to leave your classroom, and teachers have always been told that if you need to leave for whatever reason, make sure that you talk to your neighboring teacher to help monitor your students. But even at that point, having an A and a B day, teachers don't have an off period every day.
Right. Well, and then again, Ms. Webb, this is only temporary. The 400 wing is going to be reestablished by December,
Okay.
and there is a teacher's lounge that's going to be in there. So there will be a teacher's lounge in the 200 wing and a teacher's lounge in the 400 wing. So there'll be accessibility. This is just temporary, and it is going to be a little uncomfortable while everything is completed, but we're only talking about September, October, November, and possibly part of December.
And the reason I bring that up is because I'm concerned about the teachers and liabilities. And there are 2 bathroom facilities in the 1300 wing that are indicated in their staff, male and female. And I know I addressed it with Mr. Perez during our Monday night meeting, that if those are used by the staff, either from the 1300 wing and the 1000 wing, and students that need to go, they can go to the 1000 or the 1100 wing. That will take care of that because they're close by. But I don't know, that was my concern, because I hate to see a teacher filed upon because there's a student and they're using the same facilities, and that's what was happening in the 1300 wing last year. And we can't have that. And that's not addressed in any of our construction right now. And I know school's gonna start, and I'm just trying to be, I guess, proactive and look at things that might happen versus them happening, and then we have to address them.
Sure, I'm sure that we'll get with Dr. Perez and he'll come up with a workable plan for everyone that is reflective of your concerns.
And then the other question that I had was on in operations. See, and this would have been helpful too, because I'm going by the old budget workshop that we had. And in here, I see where a lot of the sections have been taken off, like the CNI, the Cardwell or Calderon. There's money allocated to it, but there is no money on your left-hand side.
Correct.
So I'm assuming that that's not going to be done this year.
It's our recommendation that we not do it this year. That would be correct. If there's no money, if it says no, then the money automatically goes off on the left-hand side.
Okay. And because that's exactly what I had done with the previous one, and figured like, well, we can address some this year and some next year, but I noticed that that had already been done, so that would have been helpful to have ahead of time. And the last one on the technology, the desktop computers, sir. We have 200 and, no, how many do you have up there? 500 and something? I can't see it. 550?
550 units, estimated cost $288,750.
Yeah, but it's already been removed as well. And those laptop computers are going to offices, or where are they going, the 550 computers? Or we're not getting them this year?
Right. We had these items right here came off of our sustainability plan.
Okay.
So what we did is we combined what the total computers were across the network and divided it by 5 years. That's how we were able to meet the number of units. So that's if we get one computer every 5 years. We currently have 550 that need to be replaced every year at that cost. We do still have monies in our general technology budget for a PC refresh, but not on a 5-year rotation. So that's the difference there. So it shows we're not replacing them, but we will through our general budget.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. That's all I have, sir.
Thank you. On a positive note, I just want to say that administration has done a great job of thinking in regard to the life skills. This is one group that is most neglected, and that building is certainly in need of renovation and modernizing and whatever you might want to call it. Throughout the years, the time that I worked with the different schools, it seemed to be that it was a forgotten group. Budget allocations were not made to life skills, and that group was kind of neglected. So I'm glad that, especially the one at freshman, it needs, a lot of work needs to be done to modernize and update it. I'll turn it over to Ms. Gonzalez for questions.
I just wanted to, when I saw the $1 million for the fine arts, I said, oh, great, they're going to have a stage and dressing rooms and everything like an Ingle Pass. But then they told me it's for dance, correct? And it's raising the ceiling that's going to cost all that. We haven't decided on that yet, or that's what we're deciding?
No, that's our recommendation based on what we want to do with the high schools is to bring it up to par. These are just recommendations. Y'all can, like Ms. Webb did, we'll come back and bring you a cost for choir, and how much that would cost. And if y'all would rather do that first, then it's up to y'all. This is just our recommendation on what we think we can get done this year, but y'all can change it. Y'all can turn some of these to no and have more money for salaries or for whatever you'd like. This is just our recommendation based on what we think our personnel can do, how we can shift the population around. I would caution the board that in terms of the high school, we definitely need the sprinkler system for the cafeteria, because the fire marshal has already indicated that, and we definitely would like to see the renovation in its entirety completed, the ceiling and the floor, because we've already started. But beyond that, you know, we're not. We think this is the best approach, so it's our recommendation. But they're all subject to change. It's based on what y'all would like to see. I just want to explain why we opted for the dance. So if we look at the number of kids that take dance, fine arts is a requirement for graduation. In the past, art was how you covered fine arts. That's just not the case now. If you look at the number of students that take dance with Ms. Rodriguez, it is a lot of students. If you look at the number that's growing in Bells, it's a lot of students. Where Bells used to have, I'm going to say at the low point, at some point it might have had 12 kids in some years. You know, now it's running well above 50. Dance company has grown, and I'm not going to pretend to know the number, but I'd say there's as many, if not more, kids in dance company that there is in Bells. And then you have 3 cheerleading groups. You have your freshmen, your JV, and your varsity now. So if you look at the aggregate number of students that either take a dance class for fine arts, or are in Bells, or in dance company, or cheerleading, it's exponentially greater than the number that there is in choir, for example. And not that you prioritize one over the other, but they just need space. There's no space. There's no space.
There's no space.
Can
I say something?
Yes, turn it over to
I
Amy.
have just if you can just go back to the Buena Vista drive-through, because I've been looking and I think I'm just a little confused. It's going to be the church is on this side, so we'll just be driving around the back now.
Yes.
So where are we going to exit?
I'll walk out there and put it up. So.
Right. Mm-hmm.
She has to go back and look at it, but our recommendation was that the vehicles enter here and drop off the students here at the gym. That provides this whole back area as a clean area for the vehicle, and removes it from having to wait here and the students would turn around this way back. So we would enter off of on the side and exit here at Echo Valley.
Through the teacher parking lot.
Right.
Okay.
We talked about making this whole playground right here that's not used at all, eventually into parking. But initially, this small room that used to be a drop-off area, or still is, this would become more buses
and the daycare vans. So you'll open back the front of the school for parent parking and stuff like that. During the day. Okay. Okay. Thank you. And then I just have a statement, because I just want to say thank you for the time that you guys put into this, right? And I'm one of the ones that haven't done the workbook yet, but I'm going to get on that, I promise. I promise I'm going to get on that. But there is no room. Back to the fine arts thing, because I felt like we were kind of like, let me get the right words. I felt like we were we don't want to separate anybody. It needs work all the way around. I mean, I was in the band hall singing. I sang in that band hall, and then it moved over back to the old band hall. It needs work in there. There's no ifs, ands, buts about it. Little theater, it needs work. But I'm not. There are so many girls dancing now. It's unbelievable. There is no room. I suggest you go upstairs. You go back into that. We can't do it now, but upstairs, there's no room. There's just no room for those girls. And there just isn't any more dancing room. That's just what it is. But I don't want us to separate it. Fine arts is fine arts. We appreciate everybody and what they do. The theater And the choir director, they do amazing things, but there's no room for those girls to dance, and that's just what it is. But yes, the choir room needs a lot of work. The little theater needs a lot of work, but fine arts needs work in general. Let's just say it like that. But as far as the dance part goes, there's no more room for dancing. It just isn't. So I just felt like we were kind of less like picking and stuff a little. So but fine arts needs help all the way around. So, and we get to choose. So, and maybe we can do a little bit here and a little bit there, and then everybody will get a little bit. But I don't want to like separate because it all needs a little help. It all needs a lot of help, actually. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you, Mr. Mesa.
And I just want to say the interactive workbook is still ongoing until the very end, because I know the last meeting that we had, there was that cost of passing the $25 on to the employee. That was a new thing that was added, if I understand correctly, Dr. Rios.
It was an option to reduce the money that the state gave. So the state said, look, you need to use 30% of this money to give to teachers. Now, part of it can be for benefits. So we made that statement, but the board was clear and saying, no, that money is going to go straight to salary, and if we need to provide for insurance, then we do it ourselves, and that's what we did.
Okay, great. But it's still ongoing, so, Amy, you're okay. Since the first time I entered something, I've also changed my mind on a couple of things, so it's still ongoing. Mrs. Webb?
We haven't seen the new one, because I haven't gotten the new one yet.
The new updated one?
The new updated one, I haven't seen it.
No, this was finalized today.
Okay.
So we're gonna do that one.
So now we're going to send this back out to y'all, and then you have between now and the time we meet again to provide any kind of feedback.
So would it be possible to get a cost factor if Mr. Hangate can speak to, I think Mr. Gonzalez is the one that does acquire, am I right or wrong? Okay, and at least get a baseball idea of what the cost would be as to what needs are needed there, and maybe with Ms. Martin, with the theater arts, yes, theater,
Okay.
just so that we can have something and be able to make a decision as to which way we need to go. Because what I'm thinking is if it's less costly to do these and take care of two, then we can move forward afterwards and address all of the dance at one time, But what are the cost factors? Because we know some of the needs, like Mr. Contreras mentioned, but really we don't know the needs. We know that there's something needed, like lighting definitely at the little theater, but I don't know what else. Choir, the same thing, they have no space, but I don't know what else. Would it be possible?
Absolutely. We can come up with a ballpark figure, but when you talk about the theater and the choir room, not so much with the theater. I think the theater, based on what they share with us, it'll be easy. But when we talk about the choir room, we just have to have a best guess scenario because of all the acoustics that go into it. And we'll do the best that we can. I would just offer to you, just for the time being, that we would. Until we get something different, I'll have Mr. Arredondo put in 2 line items, one for choir hall and one for theater arts, and until we get you a better number, we're just, because we really want to send this out tonight to y'all, we'll just divide up that money that we allocated for the fine arts wing into 2, and then if we get an update, we'll share that with you. When we were working on the acoustical definition for the cafeteria, it took us all of a month and a half, and that's what was just working with different architects. That's why I can't promise you a better figure, but we'll do the best we can.
And I just want to make a statement here. when the legislators would go out and do a news brief, everyone said that every teacher was getting $5,000. It's a big misunderstanding. I think we have heard other districts when we had the post-legislative conference in San Antonio, SLI. Some teachers not too far from here are getting $400. When it's all said and done, the elected officials went out and said, across the board, $5,000. That's not what districts calculate when they get the template and they run their numbers. And of course, it changed 6 different times. But it's misleading. I think we are privileged to have this amount that we have. It looks great for us. I think this is the best budget I've seen in the number of years that I've served on this board. And there's still some other pending funding that might come across our way in regard to the wind farm and the miscalculation in regard to T.Y. Pickett. But I think the administration and everyone else involved has done a great job. We have some work, you know, this is why we're discussing here. It's not final until we approve the budget, so we still have some input to do. And but it'll all be for the best of this district and the employees and the students that we serve. At this point, I'll turn it back to Mr. Redondo.
I just want to piggyback on what you said, Mr. Mesa. That was absolutely correct, and I'm glad you mentioned it. That when HB3 initially came out, it was said it was $5,000 across the board, but only for teachers. And I think administration has done a great job in pointing out that it's not only going to be the teachers. Not only is it wasn't $5,000, but it is, because it's a combination from with HB3 and the budget, the general fund. But it's for all the other employees, for paraprofessionals, custodians, cafeteria, but everybody's getting a raise, which is something that we need to point out, because there is a misunderstanding that only the teaching profession is getting, but when quite honestly, everybody's going to get the raise across the board. You know, so it is a great budget. Obviously, there is work to be done, and hopefully we can work on the stipends for the coaching and the lead teachers. But at the end of the day, I mean, staff has done a great job. Thank you.
Dr. Rio?
I want to make a recommendation. Here's what I would recommend in terms of the fine arts. Because I know that it's going to be rushed, I would recommend to the board, set aside $1.25 million for fine arts without any commitment that it's going to be for dance or for choir or for theater arts. And then let us spend some time doing a more in-depth study. Then we'll have a construction workshop and we'll bring it to y'all and we'll present all information, and then you could say, because otherwise we'd be guessing. And there's absolutely no way that I can get you a very detailed figure to where we can make sound decisions. But if you decide to allocate $1,250,000 to fine arts, I'll commit to y'all that Mr. Chapa will gather all the construction information necessary after we have a detailed conversation with Ms. Rodriguez, with the Bell sponsor, with the choir director, with the fine arts director, and say, okay, this is what it will cost to do everything. And I'm sure the wish list initially will be really big, and then we can just bring it down and have that presentation that the board can discuss. And that way, we can move forward with adopting a budget and not committing to something that then we're not going to be able to do. And then you can take your time, and we can take our time to get you better data. I would just hate to just fall short and disappoint some people.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Mr. Dr. Rios. But also look at the square footage that the mechanic shop and the welding shop left behind. You know, I know that there's a corner there where the mechanic shop used to be. It's roofed. I don't know. Maybe we can look at it and see if we can build it up to we can use that square footage for something, because I know it's there.
It's all part of the plan, and if you recall, when we were trying to do the first bond election, we talked about using that area for that purpose. But so the recommendations that we're making for y'all now they all stem back from those bond election proposals and allocating room where I guess where it was prioritized, by that committee. So we're kind of following that plan, but anyway, the idea for that space was to eventually do another dressing room and industrial sized kitchen for culinary arts. So that's all part of the plan. Anyhow, anyway, that's my recommendation, that we set aside 1.25 million and that we come back with some real numbers and give you all a chance to digest it after September.
It sounds a lot better. Sounds a lot better.
Mr. Messi? I like that idea about coming back and including all of the fine arts as it's stated in there, and bringing Ms. Rodriguez, Mr. Gonzalez, and Ms. Martin in together so that they can feel like Ms. Haynes said, it's all together. It's not one entity versus another entity, and that way we can address all of them, and maybe we can figure something out where everybody will get something and eventually get to where the end result. But I want to say, Henry, thank you so much for putting this together, and I'll be waiting for it. But great job. I think everything looks very, very well planned, and thank you, you and your team.
At this time, we'll turn it back to Mr. Redondo, finish out our workshop.
Okay, I think we have to thank Amy Childress. She's been working really hard on this budget, and at the same time, we have an audit going on. We haven't mentioned that. Yvonne's also working on the audit right now, so we got audit and budget at the same time. But thank you. It's a lot more fun working on it when you got revenue going up than when you got revenue going down, and I can vouch for that. So important dates that are coming up. The next steps, special called board meeting for the proposed budget on August the 15th. Public hearing and adoption of the 2019-2020 budget and tax rate, August the 22nd. And then final amendments for the 2018-2019 fiscal year budget, August the 29th.
Sorry, can you go back? When is the regular August meeting? What day does it fall in?
That falls on
Is it the month?
the third Monday is August the 19th.
19th. Just so that we know that there, between the 15th and the 22nd, we'd have 3 meetings. And I know it's 3 meetings within 7 days, so just a heads up.
Bring good dinner. Betty.
It just so happens to be my wife's birthday.
Which day?
Which day?
Every
Which
time.
of the
The
three?
19th.
And unfortunately, these 3 days, we can't change them, but maybe we can have a good dinner on the 19th and invite your wife.
Make a special cake for her.
It's not the first time I miss her birthday.
Ah, pobrecita.
Happens always in the 19th for some reason, but fine. And I know you have a meeting in Austin somewhere around the 22nd.
Mine's on a Saturday, so I can leave
Okay.
Friday.
Okay. Okay, so everyone, make sure that we have these dates down.
And we'll send you the interactive workbook
Wonderful.
tonight.
So at this time, we're gonna adjourn our workshop and go into our regular board meeting.
Can you go back real quick to the August, because I think the dates are wrong. Does it say August or say July?
Just August.
August.
I think August 15, 19, 22nd.
Let's see.
It's in this.
I think the date's, July, August, the post meeting.
August 15th
When are the three special, the 15th, the 19th?
and the 22nd.
Because in my calendar, I have the 15th being a Thursday,
Yes.
16th, 17th, and 19th being Monday, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, okay,
Yes.
okay. That was in July. No, we're
Is
good.
that it, Mr. Contreras?
Yeah, got it.
Okay. Then we will adjourn the budget workshop and go straight into our regular board meeting with item 8, reports, 2019-2020 construction projects. Mr. Henge?
That was, Mr. President, we included that, we embedded that as part of the budget.
Okay, wonderful. Makes our time go faster.
Yeah.
Next item we have is 13A, consideration of approved purchase order for $25,000 for property liability, buildings, and fleet insurance. Amount and appropriate vendor will be determined prior to Thursday, July 25th, 2019. Mr. Redondo.
Good evening, board members, Dr. Rios. Yeah, we have our general property liability insurance up to date. We solicited proposals. We put copies on your desk, and we finalized our decision earlier this morning. And on the presentation that we have there, just so for your information, we have the historical costs for the past 5 years to give you a good view. We've had the insurance with TASB for more than 5 years, but we just decided to prepare the 5-year analysis. So do you have something to compare with? We also included the bid sheet, which has the coverages from the different bidders. We had 5 bidders. However, some of the bidders did not bid on the whole, on all the coverages that we needed. And at the end, it really came down to 2 companies. One, the current one that we have, TASB, and another one. And our recommendation, well, first of all, if there's any questions from the
Questions
information?
from board members? Hearing none.
No. Okay.
I just, Mr. Rondo, does it fluctuate? You know, I know that was, I think the buildings, you know, that 25% increase, but at other times, you know, it's almost like twice as much. Is that with a hailstorm, or is that normally when the costs increase so much?
Yeah, usually we have a senior consultant for TASB here, Adrian Peña. If he can probably answer that, but you know, some of the thing with insurance, as whatever you're protecting, because we have as value of the cars increase, well, the coverage is going to increase. As workman's comp, usually as salaries increase, the coverage cost is going to increase. You don't see it going down. It's always.
So essentially it's gonna increase just because.
Yeah, just
of the values,
because,
property
yeah.
values and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Mr. Arnold, just for clarification, how much had the property insurance increased year over year in the analysis that we shared with the board about 2 months ago, 3 months ago? Do you recall?
So the year over year, we've had, we go back to year 2014, 15, there was a 5% increase. The next year was a 10% increase. The next year was 3% increase. A year after that was 14, and this year is 5%.
Wow.
There really isn't a justifiable or an appropriate answer as to why it increases. I mean, they obviously have their projections, and they have to project how to stay solvent. I was concerned about how much it had increased over the last 5 years, and we hadn't bid it. So I think the report that Mr. Arredondo shared with me as we were preparing for the budget was that there was going to be another 15% increase this time. And I said, well, that's unacceptable because it's just gone on increasing every year. And we think a 5% increase is better. I think that TASB, because they knew they had to bid, probably sharpened their pencil a little bit, and instead of doing a 15% increase, they did a 5% increase. So we appreciate their efforts in that area. Unfortunately, other areas, other companies didn't bid the entire packet. TASB has this rule that they're selling it as a package, and the one price depends on another. That's our recommendation is going to be to stay with TASB, and that's where we're at.
Okay. Yeah, I look at these numbers, and we're favorable, and others like minus 19%. When you look at student and athletic accident insurance, it's gone down quite a bit from 63,000 to 42,000.
We bid that out, and we got a favorable response.
And
Same provider.
I'm glad to see that.
Yeah.
That's the only question I have, just that, it fluctuates. Anyone else?
Nothing.
No. Hearing no other questions, would you read the recommendation, please?
Okay, it is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the purchase order over $25,000 to Texas Association of School Boards in the amount of $939,685.
You have heard the recommendation from administration. Is there a motion for approval? Mr. Contreras, seconded by Mrs. Webb. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your right hand. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Item 14A, Human Resources, consideration to approve the conversion of excess budgeted position for a bilingual/ESL director. Aide Garcia.
Yes, sir. Good evening, President Mesa, Dr. Rios, members of the board. We're here tonight for consideration to approve a position for bilingual ESL director. We usually allocate monies to cover at least 5 positions for teaching, and we have an excess budget. And from that monies, we would like to recommend to approve the position for a director for bilingual ESL. And this position would report to our Chief Instructional Officer, Mrs. Gomez. And if there's questions as far as what this person will doing, Ms. will be doing, Ms. Gomez is here. As far as the funding, then I can go ahead and help you with that.
Can I want to clarify something. She's referring to funding it. We're talking about funding it for the month of August. It would be funded regular budget
For next
month. So when she talks about excess, we're just talking about that 1 month so that we could begin to make appropriate action. So by approving it today, you're essentially approving it for the next budget year as well.
Right. We have favorability in that specific budget, so that would cover for this year, for this remaining month.
Sure. Can you come up to the podium, Ms. Gomez? I anticipate some questions.
Okay, I'll turn it over to board members for questions.
Honestly, that's one of the budgeted items though, right? For next year.
It's one of the items that you would select yes or no to.
Yeah.
But we're hoping that you approve it and that we can start moving in that direction.
I'm good.
Ms. Gonzalez?
Well, I had already had a private conversation here with these 2 people about the position, but they can go ahead and answer questions for other people. I was asking about the reason for it. What would the director do? What does the coordinator do? What does the coordinator, can't the coordinator do the job instead? That's what I asked. If you can address those, please.
Yes, good evening, President Mesa, Dr. Rios, and members of the board. Ms. Gonzalez, Ms. Garcia, and I did have a conversation prior to this regarding those same questions. Every year we come before you and we have to present the PBMAS report. That's the Performance-Based Monitoring and Analysis System report. That is the equivalent of our accountability for the state. That is the federal accountability. Having said that, it does look at 5 different areas. It will rate us and stage us on the CTE program, on the special ed program, on the migrant program, the bilingual program, and the Title I program. So those are the 5 areas that the federal government looks at because we do get federal funds. We do have a special ed director who oversees all the compliance and everything that has to do with the federal program reporting and the special ed program. We have a director for CTE who also oversees that entire program. Both of those report to me as the cabinet member. Up until now, we did have a Title I coordinator, a migrant coordinator. The Title I coordinator position is actually very equivalent. It rates us exactly the way TEA already rates us for the state. So in reality, that's taken care of. The migrant position has now reduced itself to 148 students. Again, very small. 4 years ago, we had in excess of 1,200 students in that program. The largest program that we have right now is the bilingual program. It is covered under PBMAS, but we do not have a director. We have not had a director for several years. We have only had one coordinator. So I just kind of wanted to lay that out, and now I can answer the question as to what the coordinator has been doing. That one position has handled both the compliance and the instruction. So under compliance, we have waiver reports that we have to submit to the state. We have applications that we have to submit to the state. But under the instruction, we have training for many teachers, our beginner intermediate teachers at the academies, our non-certified teachers working with our bilingual students at the non-academies, and our 6th through 12th grade ESL teachers who are ESL, but we need to continue to provide staff development. The compliance piece says that these teachers have to pass certain tests throughout the year. In order to be able to rank a student and rate a student and submit, they have to pass very difficult tests every year. They go through beginning, middle, and end of the year training, and then they have to pass these tests to rate. The coordinator has been in charge of making sure that we have ample teachers who pass those tests also, so that they can rate. She's gotten materials and resources for not just the academies, but for all programs. She looks at best practices. She conducts all the PD. We do have 5 RTI days and 8 staff development days, and she does present at every single one. It's just one person. That's the coordinator. So the director piece, I have absorbed most of it along with the other duties. By bringing her on board, she would be able to analyze the entire program and then manage the people below her, which would be a coordinator, and which would also be the compliance piece. So she'd have instruction, and she would have compliance, and then hopefully we could bring the program to where we need to bring. We were able to get out of stage 4, but I predict that we're going to be at stage 3 again because we're stagnant. We're doing what we need to do, not to decrease, but we haven't been able to move the program forward. By having a director pay attention to the needs, to the monitoring, to the students, who's moving, how many students are moving, did we make the growth, did we decrease, those kinds of things, and directing the coordinator, we feel that our instruction, our teacher capacity, and our support would increase. I'm not sure if I answered the entire question, Mrs. Gonzalez.
Yes, ma'am. I just wanted, in case anybody else had any more questions, but that's what I asked.
I just want to say that over the years, you know, it used to be the AEIS report, that now the TAPE, or Texas Assessment of Progress report. We look at that very critically, and one of the areas that we always have questions on is the bilingual group and the ESL group because their scores are low.
Yes, sir.
And there's a lot of monitoring that goes on with, I don't know, some years back he started calling M1, M2. To me, that used to be a firecracker, but anyway, M1, M2. But anyway, these students are monitored once they leave the program. If they, for example, opt out of the program, if if there's a denial form filed by the parent, if they're out of bilingual, they should be in bilingual receiving services, but if they opt out of it, they still have to be monitored.
That is correct. They still have to meet exit criteria. And Mr. Mesa, the new law requires that starting this year, we monitor 5 years. So it's gone
5
from
years.
M1,
Wow.
M2 to M3, M4, M5.
It used to be 2 years.
5 years of monitoring. So it is a tremendous amount of
It is, and I know that,
work.
as I mentioned, I look at those bilingual numbers and I always have questions in regard to that because they are substantially low compared to our regular students. So there's a lot of work that needs to happen there. And I just know that with the paperwork involved with, the LPAC meetings and having the folders and the documentation that you need to have in order, there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes in regard to the bilingual and ESL programs. But I'll pass it on to other questions. Mrs. Webb?
Who would be in charge of the LPACs, the director or the coordinator?
The coordinator will be in charge of monitoring the LPACs at the campuses to make sure that the paperwork is correct. We do have 2 LPAC clerks that assist with that, elementary and secondary. That compliance coordinator would report to the director.
Okay. Then can you allude to the which program is it exactly that our district is using? Is it the 2-way model, the 1-way model, early emergent, early exit model? Which model are we using?
Yes, ma'am. We are still using the early exit model.
Okay, because I know that with the blended students, and I don't have the elementary figures as to how many students in the elementary campuses that are in bilingual didn't pass. But as far as with blended, we had about 216 that didn't pass reading and 154 that didn't pass math. Because, and the way I came out with those figures, we had 630 that tested and only 414 that passed the test.
Correct.
Leaving 216 that didn't pass reading. So there is a definite need for us to track the students and find out why they're not passing. Because if these students don't pass, then we're failing these students.
Yes, ma'am. That is correct.
Mr. Contreras?
I'm good.
Amy? Okay. Then hearing no other questions, recommendation from administration?
Yes, sir. It is a recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the conversion of the excess budgeted position for a bilingual ESL director.
You've heard the recommendation. I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So move.
Mr. Contreras, is there a second? Amy? All those in favor, please indicate by raising your right hand. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, the time is 7:35. We're going into closed session in regard to items permitted by sections 551.071, 551.072, 551.073, 551.074, 551.076, 551.082, 551.084, and 551.087 of the Government Code of the Texas Open Meetings Act. If a final vote is required on any matter discussed in closed session, it will be taken upon reconvening in open session. We're now in closed session. Okay, the time is 8:32 p.m. We will now reconvene into open session. We're under item 17A. Consideration to approve the personnel report to include the following: new hires, district vacancies, retirements, resignations. Aide Garcia.
Good evening again. It is the recommendation of administration that the Board of Trustees approve the following new hires: Vasti Flores, ELA teacher at San Felipe Memorial Middle School; Fernanda de los Santos, CTE College and Career Readiness teacher at Del Rio Middle School; Anthony Hasso, CTE College and Career Readiness teacher at Del Rio Middle School; Oscar Mendoza, science teacher at Blended Academy; and Robert Garza, CTE Law Education teacher at Del Rio High School.
You've heard the recommendation from administration. Is there a motion for approval?
So move.
Mr. Contreras, seconded by Mrs. Webb. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your right hand. Motion carries unanimously. Item 17B, consideration to approve the position of counselor at Blended Academy. Aide Garcia.
It is a recommendation of administration that the Board of Trustees approve Lynette Hernandez for counselor at Blended Academy.
You have heard the recommendation from administration. I will entertain a motion for approval. Mr. Contreras, seconded by Amy. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your right hand. Motion carries unanimously. There being no other items on the agenda, do I hear a motion for adjournment? Mr. Contreras, seconded by Mrs. Webb. All those in favor? Motion carries. Good night, everyone.